Welcome back. Last January, Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan signed into law the same-sex marriage prohibition bill. It criminalizes public displays of affection between same-sex couples. The law also imposes up to a 14-year sentence for those who enter a same-sex marriage contract or civil union. Well, joining us now from Houston is Derek Obialo. He's a Nigerian-American U.S. attorney and expert on Sub-Saharan Africa. David, thanks for joining us. Why have anti-gay laws become so popular in Sub-Saharan Africa?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, I think first it has to be said the religious conservatism that is now running amok in Africa, especially both Christian and Muslim conservative rhetorics are ramped up, mostly coming from the Christians. It's coming from the from American conservatism. They've largely been pushed away. They've been being subdued in America, so they're finding outlets in Africa, and that has contributed a lot to a lot of religious rhetoric. Islam has always been homophobic, and so the combination of those two religions. And Nigeria and most of the African countries, either they are largely Christian or largely Muslim or a mixture of both.
So what you're saying here is this opposition to same-sex unions is not something that is homegrown, it's influence that's coming from the outside.
Well, yes, partly. You have to remember there has always been laws against sodomy, which was in the books from the colonial times. But that hasn't really been enforced, and there has not been this kind of a rhetoric about homosexuality prior to what we're seeing in the recent developments. So I think what's going on is mostly this outgrowth of fundamental religiosity, mostly coming from the Pentecostal Christianity and Islam. And that largely has been an outside influence. I mean, Christianity has only been in Africa in the last not even 200 years, and Islam probably in the last 500. So,
yeah, if we look at the impact it's having in these countries, I mean, let's look at Nigeria, for example. The law in Nigeria states that anyone who enters into a same-sex marriage can be sentenced to up to 14 years in prison, as I'd mentioned. Now, anyone who attends a same-sex marriage can also face penalties, could be up to 10 years in prison. Why are these actions a criminal offense?
What you're seeing is a pushback from what mostly African societies finding that's going on globally, which is the Western trend towards acceptance of homosexuality. And the African societies want to lend their voice to this global debate. And in essence, because the law is an oxymoron, there's no reason to criminalize it, because it's always been criminalized. It just hasn't been enforced. Right now, what you're seeing, these laws that are sweeping across most African countries, is just as a result of them trying to say, well, hold on a minute. We don't want this, and we're going to tell you how we stand on this issue. And that's why you're seeing an enforcement and the laws actually being enacted in several sub-Saharan African countries. They want to be hard on that issue.
Right, as you pointed out, you know, a lot of this has to do with outside influences, but the government, especially in Nigeria, has a different explanation. The presidential spokesman, Reuben Abati, said, this is a law that is in line with the people's cultural and religious inclinations. So it is a law that is a reflection of the beliefs and orientation of the Nigerian people. What is your response to that?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the polls indicate up to 97%, which actually, given the margin of error, is actually 100% of the people believe that this law is right and it's in tune with the culture of the people. But what I'm saying is the virulent opposition that we are seeing is as a result of external influences, because that homophobic cultural homophobic attitudes that most Sub-Saharan Africans have always been there, but has been subdued. We are not seeing the same kind of things that are going on now that went on like maybe 50 or 60 years ago. The Bible hasn't changed its distaste for homosexuality, or Islam hasn't changed, but there's something different that is happening right now, and that is as a result of the debate that is going on around the world, and the need for the African society to lend their voice to this debate. And particularly, what needs to be said is there's a particular brand of Christianity that is sweeping across Africa. This is no longer your Orthodox Christianity. This is a very virulent Pentecostalism that is sweeping across Africa. And that is contributing to a large extent to this phenomenon. And of course, there's, Islam with all the problems that's going on and everything, and Boko Haram, ISIS, and all Al-Qaeda and all that stuff. People are lashing on to traditional religion and finding comfort in those fundamental literalism. And that's what is mainly contributing to this phenomenon that we're seeing.
We talked with a Nigerian gay rights activist, Bisi Alimi. We talked with him here in the United States. He says he can't return home to his country because he'll be arrested immediately. Do you have any idea of how many people have already been arrested in Nigeria?
Well, the Nigerian government, they don't keep a good account of, there's no data on how many people have been victimized, I mean, for very good reasons. But there has been reports and stories of, people being hounded in Abuja, which is the capital, mainly in northern Nigeria, which of course Sodomby actually is punishable by death, and in several places in Lagos and sometimes in the South. We don't have good data to support what's going on, but we have news reports coming up about, I think in the last probably 4 months, there's been one newspaper report of a death as a result of attacks towards homosexuals.
Okay, sir, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us.